Harmony. Welcome to episode 7 of Harmony and Friends, casual conversations about art and business. I'm going to get a quick question up for you here in the audience because I'm curious to know. Tell us the name of your favorite picture book illustrator and what you love about their style, because that is the topic of the day. We're going to talk to 3 individuals who have a career in or experience with picture book illustration. And that covers 2 topics. That's going to be traditional publishing and self-publishing. And I just can't wait to hear what they have to share about becoming a picture book illustrator. So with that, let's bring them on. Hello, everyone. Oh, I'm trying to unmute you. There we go. All right.
Hi.
Hey. Sorry, it took a second there, but we're up and running now. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you for having us.
Thank you.
We are going to start with a quick round of introductions in case there's anyone watching who doesn't know each of you yet. So I would love to hear about you. You each have 2 to 3 minutes to just share about your art business, and anything else you'd like us to know as an introduction. Anna Denise, can I ask you to start?
Yeah, of course. So I'm Anna Denise. I'm a Dutch artist. I'm also a mom of 2 little boys, Abel and Jacob. And I can't remember a moment where I wasn't drawing or creating art, to be honest. I think I won a prize when I was 4 for the bird watching society, where I drew a little bird, and I was very proud and convinced I was going to be an artist forever. Then when I was in high school and university, I actually took a slightly different, well, not completely different, but I studied art history instead because I wanted to learn about all the greats, and have since had a whole career in both that side and working on marketplaces, but never stopped drawing. And at a certain point, that became also people asking me for commissions, me drawing little things, and I felt ready to, create something for myself and create some books as well. So that's where we're at. Still drawing, still going strong and loving it. I think that's it.
Awesome. I can't wait to see some of the things you've created. You have a visual that you'll share later. So looking forward to it. Ariel, how about you?
Sure. Hi, my name is Ariel. I'm a children's book illustrator. I used to live in Boston, where I grew up, and then spent a bunch of time in New York, where I was actually an English teacher in a high school. But from there, I figured out that I didn't really love doing that. It wasn't my passion. Wanted to just go back to something that made me happy to do, and that was drawing. And with one thing and another, I ended up getting a portfolio together and becoming a children's book illustrator, which has honestly been a dream come true, and I'm so happy to do it. Now I live in France with my husband, my dog, and my 5-month-old baby, Eloise.
Thank you so much for joining us. 5 months. Wow.
My pleasure.
You are juggling a lot. So thank you. And I can't wait to hear all about you.
It's so good to talk about this again. Instead of just talking about baby stuff and baby voices.
Thank you. Niña, how about you?
Hi, I'm Niña Mata. I am an author and picture book illustrator. I've been doing this for over a decade now. And I'm like Anna. I don't remember a time where I haven't stopped drawing since I think maybe 4 or 5 years old. And, did high school in an art vocational school, went to Fashion Institute of Technology in New York, studied illustration there. I wanted to be a fine artist, but that just, like Ariel, it didn't connect with me, or I didn't align with it. And somebody suggested illustration, which I've never heard about. And I did not put 2 and 2 together and was like, oh, I always end up in the children's section in a bookstore or a library. And it just felt kismet for me. I've been lucky enough to illustrate so many wonderful books and reach out to so many kids.
I love it. I love your work too. It's absolutely beautiful. And I can relate to what you said. In the end, picture book illustration, I realized was not what was meant for me. So kind of how all of you have been shifting. That's something I was interested in. And then I realized like, this is absolutely not aligned with my art style or anything like that. But it still blew my mind when I realized it was an option, like it is a field out there. And I think that is why I love this series, that it really is supposed to help artists understand what are the different options, where do I want to specialize, how do people get there? And so I'm so glad that the three of you are here and are willing to share your story. Thank you. So with that, we are going to go over into a round that I call setting the scene. And that's just what it is. It's a few kind of fact-based questions, not a lot of advice. It isn't going to be a lot of long answers from each of you, but just setting the scene so that people watching, if they don't know your background, have more of an idea what your experience is like. So we'll go around in a circle again. And we'll start on the other side. Yep.
Okay.
Love being in the middle.
So I would love to know, what kind of art business do you have? And if you create work other than picture books, what other income streams do you have from your art?
Good question. So if I'm not doing picture books, which is has become a full-time job, fortunately, I'm on Etsy. I love doing art prints and sending it out and just imagining it being on walls, and it's just fun. But other than that, I really don't have another stream of income. This is pretty much it. I really love doing this. It's just something I love.
I think it's inspiring for a lot of people, because sometimes you also get the question of like, can you live off of something like that? So I think that's also really awesome. You don't have to have other income streams. I think you can, each artist figures out how to juggle, you know, their life. And so you've made it work that way. So that's very cool.
Yes, thank you.
Ariel.
So I just got to the point a couple years ago where this became my full-time job, and I didn't have any other income streams. But when I began, it was, you know, definitely a different story. I was doing commissions for friends and family, and then that turned into commissions from Etsy and from friends of friends, and that actually gave me a lot of the confidence that I needed to realize that I could actually become an illustrator, because there was definitely several moments where I was drawing and loving it and creating portfolio, but feeling like, can I really do this? Like, this seems like a dream job, but people do it, it's their career. So I was tutoring at the same time also, because I was an English teacher, transitioned to tutoring, private tutoring, which gave me more flexibility to work on my first book. So first book and tutoring at the same time. And then I started getting enough projects that eventually this was all I was doing. Besides picture books, I also do chapter books, sometimes covers. I have 2 middle grade covers. Okay. And I just got my first character design work job. I'm very excited about. But that's it. It's still all art, drawing, illustration. Everything.
That's great. But I really like that realistic story too, because it's inspiring if you've reached this point, but it's not necessarily overnight, right? So
no.
Yeah, you got there, which is awesome. But the hope is not lost for those who are still on
Definitely not. And honestly, I should probably reach out to even more income streams in the future, just to make this even more of a lucrative career, because children's book pays not the most amazing salaries, but it's still a dream to do. So
yeah, amazing from a content perspective, but not necessarily probably the most well-paid thing out there.
No, I wouldn't say so.
All righty. Anna, Denise, how about you?
Yeah, a very, very different. I have a full-time job or career, actually. I work in online marketplaces. So I used to work for Etsy, and now I work for a Dutch company called Katawiki, which is an online auction house. Really enjoying that. Like, it's not something I do just sort of like just to pay the bills. I also really enjoy that work that I do. And my art business is very much still on the side, but I must say I love it like that, right? It gives me a wonderful balance of having something to work for in my own time, and it has something special that's just mine that I really enjoy. And it means that I do take on commissions. I also create things that I sell in my Etsy shop, but I only really pick what I want to do, and I enjoy not having like a pressure when someone contacts me for a commission that I don't feel excited about. Like I've definitely gone down that route before where I've taken it and felt like I couldn't say no, and created some of my worst work, and also hated the process. So I am right now, I maybe it'll change, but right now I'm really enjoying that balance of having those two things, and being able to do it both.
That's awesome. I'm actually in a similar boat. I know I don't do picture book illustration, but some of you watching might be following my channel and not really know what my split is. So I actually work part-time. I used to work full-time, but now after having a baby, I work part-time. And then I work part-time on kind of 2 art businesses. So I do my illustration focus, which is mostly commissions. And I'm working on some products for my own shop, which I haven't launched, but also launching a little startup company with a friend that will use my art basically on products. So I do the same as you, and I also really enjoy that balance and different type of work. So I think that's another great thing for everyone watching. There is not one right way, right? And maybe you like the mix, maybe you want to do it full time. The options are limitless.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. I'm going to hit you right back up, and we're going to go in the opposite direction. Are you self-taught, or did you attend a program specifically for illustration, Denise?
So mostly self-taught. I did during the years, like I took Domestica courses and different online courses, and I also did a summer school at the University of Arts in Cambridge. Summer school program, I think a lot of people know about it. A lot of famous people went there. And I did the summer school. It was a week for children's book illustration specifically, which was super helpful and really a lot of fun.
Yeah, I actually did that one too before. I mean, that was part of realizing that this is not my thing, but it was incredible. So if you are interested,
such a great environment.
Yeah, and maybe aren't ready to commit or will never be able to commit to like a full-time school program, I think that summer school is an incredible way to dip your feet in and get a ton of information and community. And so that's definitely—
and get a network as well. Like a lot of those people either have gone on to do the full-on MA or still do like are professional picture books artists now. And it's just really nice when you're doing your own work to have other people to be like, what do you think? What do you think about this layout? Like, it's so helpful.
Cool.
Agreed. Yeah. Ariel?
Yeah, I guess I would say self-taught, but that's a funny word because I sought out the teaching. I didn't go to any secondary school for illustration or art, but there's a lot of artists in my family. My mother is an artist. My aunts, my grandfather was an artist, cousins. So I feel like I was surrounded by it growing up, which made it feel very natural to pursue when I did realize that you could pursue it. I don't know why it didn't click for me at first, but I took actually a lot of online courses. So I don't know if you guys have heard of SVS Learn, Jake Parker and Will Terry and Lee White. Love. I'm a subscriber for them. I've taken so many of their courses, and that was very helpful before, after, during the work on books. But for digital art, that was something I really just haphazard figured out through YouTube videos and finding stuff online. And gosh, I created some terrible art the first time I tried to do digital art. It was just
Who didn't?
so bad. But then I found something called controlpaint.com. And it's this wonderful resources, these free libraries from this artist who teaches you how to use digital techniques to create works of art. And that was really helpful. You can also pay for packages, but his free library is insane. It's CTRL, controlpaint.com.
Cool.
Highly recommend.
Very cool.
Besides that, yeah, it's wonderful. I don't know. I stumbled upon it. I was in New York, so I did take some live classes, which I'm so glad I did, because there is that community aspect that is so inspiring. Sometimes being alone on your computer and looking at screens can be isolating and not as inspiring as just seeing someone else create art next to you. So I took a college course at SVA in New York, and they also had a really helpful course called just Careers in Illustration. This was before I knew I wanted to be a children's illustrator, and each day focused on a different career. And there was editorial and comics and advertising. And of course, my favorite was children's. And that helped so much to sort of pinpoint me in the direction that I'm in today.
That's incredible. I really wish I had had that when I was like 18, because I feel like
Me
it took me a good
too.
extra like 2 decades to figure these things out. Awesome. Thanks for sharing. Nina?
Yeah. So I've been fighting for my career as an artist starting at a very young age. I had to fight my parents that, hey, I want to do art. And I am sure a lot of people have been in that situation where, and I wanted it to establish that at a very young age for some reason. And so there was this art high school in Manhattan that I really wanted to go to. It was High School of Art and Design, and you had to do an art test. While we were doing an art test, the parents had to come with us for an orientation and introduce the parents to what the curriculum was, what they're going to be teaching. And I remember doing the art test. My dad came out, and he was not in favor of his only child being an artist, or a struggling artist. That's what everybody thinks, right? And he came out of that auditorium like, you have to go to this school because Tony Bennett went here. And I'm like,
oh, good job, school.
Is it LaGuardia?
No, that's not what I thought was going to happen.
LaGuardia was one school, and that was performing arts. And
okay.
this one was mostly visual arts. I also wanted to go to that school, but I had stage fright. So
I was a student teacher at LaGuardia, so I was like, oh, maybe we overlapped. But
oh, cool. Yeah, no, but I was in the High School of Art and Design, and it was they had a choice between architecture or commercial arts. And so I went toward commercial arts, which started off that path into illustration.
Very cool. You have been definitely committed.
Yes.
Awesome. So I'm going to ask you again. We'll just go backwards. And I'm wondering, when did you illustrate your first picture book, and how many picture books have you illustrated, Niña? Approximately. It might be so many you don't know.
So fun story about this. It was my 7th year working as an illustrator. I had done educational books, some editorial illustrations, and like you said, it was really hard to make a living out of this, and it wasn't going anywhere. I felt really stuck. There was a point where I was just like, I don't think I'm going to grow anymore. I think this is it. And I told my husband, I remember telling him in 2016, I was like, I think I'm done. And maybe I can go into real estate or something and just do something else, because we need the money and it's not working out. And so my husband was like, have fun. Why don't you make this your last year and just go for it. Change your style and just let go. And I did. And that very same year where I was having fun from my last year, I got my first picture book. And it happened to be a celebrity picture book, which was Lori Hernandez's She's Got This, which was really crazy. But she saw this, like, what happened with my style was I put a little bit more of who I am in it. My personal stories, I drew people I grew up with, and the scenes that really felt close to me, and that gravitated, that energy just it got such a big response really quickly. Like, I sent this me and my agent call it a ditty to her, and I was like, I'm just having fun. I just wanted to show this to you. And 2 months later, I got a picture book offer from that one drawing, which is insane. And I've been, since then, I think, illustrated almost 20 books, including some chapter books, and I Can Read series, and 4 or 5 picture books now.
Amazing. And we're going to show later. You have a kind of a portfolio prepared that I can't wait to share. That's so cool. So thank you for answering this question. It's what an inspiring story. And thank goodness your husband was like, yeah, just, give it your all. Just have fun for another year.
Yeah.
I mean, amazing. If he'd said, yeah, why don't you just quit it now?
Yes.
All of this would never have happened. Wow.
What was that? What's that saying? It's your 2 feet from 2 feet from gold, and you almost stop. Imagine if I almost stopped.
I mean, imagine all the houses maybe instead of
True.
She paints. Awesome. Thank you. Ariel?
I love that, Niña, what you said about when you had fun, you made your favorite, not only your favorite art, but the art that resonated the most with agents and publishers and people around. I think that's so true. Whenever I just have fun, which I feel like is rarer and rarer, just sitting down and creating something just for me, it usually ends up being in my portfolio the most loved thing. So
yes,
right there with you.
Yeah.
So when did I illustrate my first picture book? I think it was 5 years ago, 2018. I did The Elephant's New Shoe, and that was such a fun, scary, incredible experience because it did happen kind of fast. I got my agent, and then within a few months, I got this book from Scholastic, which is a huge publisher, and I found that very intimidating because I didn't feel prepared. But are we ever prepared? So just dove right in and did what I created. And I'm looking back on my first book, and I don't cringe. And I'm happy. So I feel like that's success right there.
Yeah.
And then how many picture books have I illustrated? I've got 6 picture books. And then I also illustrate the Good Dog series from Little Simon. And I've done 10 of those, which I can't even believe. 3, I have another series that I do called the Class Critter series by Catherine Holmes. And I've done 3 of those. A few covers, and 1 middle grade book that I'm doing the cover and the interior that will be coming out next year.
Wow, incredible.
So
Very cool. Thank you for sharing. That seems like you really took off there after your first one.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's been a wild ride, but it's so much fun.
Hanging on.
Having a great time.
Hello, Denise.
I have done 2, which seems like very little after hearing both of you. First one was in 2014, which was a book by also self-published by the author myself, someone I knew, like a family member who had written something that I illustrated, and I was not prepared. But it got done, and I'm actually still proud of the work I did. And then in 2021, I self-published my own book, which I've written and drew.
Yay.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think that's so cool. And honestly, I don't think there's anything that you have to downplay, because for just achieving a project like that and learning all the skills, and then also learning the additional skills you need to self-publish. I mean, I'm sure there's lots of people watching that that would be a dream to get that first picture book, in print in their hands. I think that is an incredible achievement.
I am very proud of it, but I'm just humbled by your impressive careers.
Hey, there's all sorts of different paths.
Writing is a whole other story.
Yeah, self-publishing is for me, single parents. You got to do everything yourself. There is no help. It's just you and hands. I bow down. You do that.
So that's my last question for each of you. Ariel, I'll start with you. Do you self-publish at all, or work with authors that you don't get through traditional publishing? Do you only work with traditional publishing, or a mix of the two?
So I have worked with one self-published author, but besides that, everything else is traditional publishing, which it's been worked out, and I've had really, really great experiences with it so far.
Awesome. Niña?
Mostly traditional. I don't think I've done self. I'm just too scared. It seems like
don't be scared.
No, but I do hear that. I mean, I think there's different fears and different challenges with each, but I do hear that a lot of it is also just kind of like having to educate, let's say, an author who doesn't know about how picture books are made can also be really difficult. And then obviously there's the negotiation for fees and making sure you're getting, paid appropriately. If the other person doesn't really know what is customary and how much work goes into it. I mean, I do think there's a whole another set of challenges that come with self-publishing too. So
Right.
yeah, impressive that some of you have done both too, because I feel like it's like learning two different approaches is always
I should
that
say,
much tougher too. Yeah.
I wasn't the self-publisher. It was the author who did everything. So it was like almost like working with a
It
traditional
worked for
publisher.
you. It wasn't so bad.
Yeah, I don't have any of those skills. Would love to learn, but not
Yeah.
yet.
Awesome. All righty. Well, thank you all. I think now everyone watching has a really good idea what starting point you had and where you are at the time of this recording. So I'm going to start with a question for you, Niña. Let me get that up. And I also have to drag you around here. So I would love to know whether you're willing to walk us through your portfolio for picture book illustration. You've provided something that I will add to the stream here. 1 second. Awesome. Yeah. And I'll take the question down so that we see the full picture.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, where should I start? I mean, these are most of the books that I've worked on so far. And yeah, like I said, when I first started my career, I was kind of drawing for the with the intent to just draw kids. There wasn't really any heart to it. There was no personality, or I didn't take any cues from my personal life or really make it vulnerable. And it wasn't until I incorporated, the fact that I am Filipino American, and that I grew up not seeing a lot of representation out there, that people really wanted to see more of my work. And that was a game changer for me. And I love textures and patterns, obviously. And a lot of this was inspired by the playtime I had with my kid when she was a toddler. And we would just take collage work and just put it all together. And yeah, and out came She's Got This. When I first, like Ariel, it was like from HarperCollins. And I'm like, my first picture book is with HarperCollins. Oh my gosh. And I was nervous, I was scared that I was gonna mess this up. And I just kept telling myself, hey, this is your year to have fun. So just keep having fun. And I did it. I incorporated everything that I did in this book, everything that I've learned while I started changing my style and putting a little bit more of myself into the work. But I do remember doing sketches for this and finishing it and doing the final art and crying really hard, because I was like, I just don't think this is good enough. I don't think this is it. I don't know. And I just felt so defeated. And it was just me. It was just totally me. Nobody was saying it, all the way through the process. The editor, the art director was like, this is great. You're fine. And no one ever gave me the hint that this is not for you. But it is that talk, right? It is that talk that you tell yourself.
And I can just feel the joy in this. I can tell what you're saying with like the change in focus, and it radiates joy. It's amazing. And then were these some of the sketches that you were mentioning?
Yeah. So this is based on Lori's childhood, and I really tried my best to get her likeness, and I think it worked. And it was just a beautiful story about, it's funny because this book was about this little girl who decides she wants to be a gymnast, and she falls. And after that first fall, she decides that she's not going to be a gymnast anymore and she wants to give up. Ironically, I was in the same position in real life. So I think it just worked out that this book was just meant for me. And she just, yeah, the book is about just keep going, even if you fall. So what if you fall? Falls are good. It teaches you something about not falling next time, or how not to fall the next time. And it, yeah.
That's good advice for the picture book illustrators too here. That one is there. That's amazing.
I have to tell myself all this talk almost every day. Like, and
It's
just
part of being an artist.
Yes. Yes.
There's no way around it.
Yeah, I hate the fall. Oh, wow. What advice do you have as far as what components you think should be in a picture book portfolio?
What should be in a picture book portfolio? I like that. I learned this in art school, where put in your strongest work first.
Mm-hmm.
Some not so favorites in the middle, and then a really strong work at the end as well, so that when people flip through it, they remember your strongest piece and they'll remember your last piece. And it should both be strong. I think authenticity is also important. You really have to be, that's what worked for me. Being really true to yourself and your story. And, we're artists, so we're going to be vulnerable regardless. We're putting our work out there. So you need to be a little bit more braver and tell your actual story, who you really are, because nobody's going to be able to tell that story but you. And people want to see it. And people really love that honesty when it comes out.
That's beautiful. Yeah, then you don't, it's kind of both, right? There may be a story that is made up or is not your own, but if you add your own story and upbringing and perspective to the illustrations, it just becomes that much fuller and richer.
Yes.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And here you have, for those that are maybe more of novices in this area, you have a character sheet kind of thing with, or just showing the character in different poses, right? So I think that's one of the important things that you need to be able to show. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. As a picture book artist, you need to be able to draw the same character over and over as consistent as possible. You're not always going to get it right, but I think with practice, you just end up getting better at it.
Practice. That's always key. Awesome. That's so great. I can really see too, you're communicating this concept. So I'm assuming this isn't necessarily maybe part of the portfolio, but part of your process. Can you explain a little the end-to-end process of how you come up with these sketches or submit, and how you end up with the end product?
Yes. So this was the sketch for the last page of She's Got This. And then the following is how the final came out.
Wow.
Yeah.
Gorgeous.
And then do you usually go through a series of sketches and then you submit them, I'm assuming, to the publisher and kind of get the okay? Or are you just doing your sketches on your own? How do you go through that process usually?
So it's a series of sketches. That's the first round that you send out to the art director. And then we'll maybe do one more round of sketches. And then from there, we move on to final art, or other people call it color samples, but I only hear final art. But yeah, that's usually the process. So it's, the first round is sketches and then color and then cover. But lately it's been cover first for some reason.
For the
Yeah.
marketing.
Yeah.
Right.
How
Not
much
my
do you
favorite.
think is expected? Like, let's say this is your very first experience with a publisher. How much do they expect you to know about the process? Do they expect you to just get started, or do you think it's okay for artists to kind of ask, okay, what do you want first from me? How did you do it?
Good question. I totally faked my funk the whole first time around. I was just like, yeah, I can do this. I've done it for years. Not, but then if I did have an actual question that needed an answer, I would ask. I definitely would ask, because every publisher works differently. So don't be afraid to ask questions. Some people some publishers want you to be more engaged in the whole bookmaking process, down to the type of paper you want to use. And then there are some publishers that just give you the PDFs to the text galleys and just work from there. And then, it's all different. So no question is a bad question, I say.
That's good to hear. And actually, that's kind of encouraging too if the process isn't completely the same, because then it's not like,
No.
oh, you're just clueless
Yeah.
and new, but oh, how do you want it specifically?
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
works in your favor.
Yes. I think that's the fun part about working with different publishers, because it doesn't feel like the same job all the time. Or especially with a different, a story or a different art director. It's not the same process all the time. It changes.
Fresh. Yeah. Okay. It sounds like a very, very, very cool job. And I know my art is very weak on storytelling, and so is my personality. Like there will, like, I'm not a storyteller. Like I just want to make pretty things.
Of course you are.
I just want to make like decorative art. Like I'm more, I want to make art for like a tea towel and a mug, and I'm good. Like that's me.
Storytelling in that as well.
There definitely is.
Yeah, and I think it's cool to know, kind of figure out, your place. Like, what do you want? And so what you're explaining, I think for the right person, sounds like an absolute dream job. Very, very cool. Thank you so much for sharing.
Sure.
I am going to get some questions up now for the next person. And you can always chime in if there's anything you want to add to what the other artists are saying. And at the end, we'll do a quick little advice round where everyone also gets to answer again. So let us take a look here. What can I ask you? Anna Denise, you are next. All right. So I would love to know, tell us about your first illustrated picture book project, or if you want the one where you've done like the self-publishing author and illustrator. I think that's super interesting and unique in this round too. How did you approach it, and how do you do things differently now, or would you do them differently if you did it again? And I'm also going to bring up
Absolutely. No, the first picture book I did indeed was with an author who's actually my brother's father-in-law, and he loves writing stories for all of his children and grandchildren. And they had asked me to illustrate it. It's not this book. This is the one I fully did myself. I do have it here. And I was like, yeah. Like, I was born with, I heard someone else say this, the how hard can it be gene? So I was like, totally, I can do that. And yes, I can do the layout. Like, how hard can it be?
Oh my goodness.
Yes. So I think he approached me this book. And I think he approached me in like 2011. And it's quite long actually. I need fully written it.
Wow.
And I think it took me like 3 years to do. Because one, I had no idea how to go from like sketch to final product. Like, I don't think he had any idea either. He was not a published author. So like, we were just trying to kind of figuring it out. I was like, this character you've written about? Is this what it should look like? I was doing it all on paper, not really sure how to make edits once he gave it to me. So I was like, I'm switching to Photoshop. This is too complicated. This was like pre-iPad. So it's like drawing everything with my little Wacom tablet and like trying to edit the colors and keeping my layers organized, which of course didn't happen. So everything was just horrible. Then figured out like, oh, everything needs to be in a different resolution. Like, you know, learning everything basically by messing it up as I went along, right? Like I made every single mistake that I think I could have made. He was fine though, right? Like it was also nice to have someone who was not stressed about the timing of it. We were just doing this fun project. So it took a couple of years. By the end of it though, I did feel like I was so over it. Like it was such a hard project. But by 2014, I was like, I need to finish this. Like I do not want to look at these characters anymore. I don't want to read the story anymore. I'm so done. But I think it was good because I learned so much about like how to communicate with an author, like how to communicate your ideas. Learning also that some people, I think, especially when they're not in the industry, a sketch, like a very simple black and white sketch, might not be good enough for them, right? Like that's not what a lot of people see when they imagine their picture book. Like they imagine something full color, like fully done. Like that's kind of what's in their head. And if you are not giving them that, they're like, what's this rough, like I thought you could draw type of thing. So I feel like I made every mistake that I could have made and I learned a lot from it. Then when I was doing my own book, which is, I think you had the picture up for that. That one's actually fun. It's an idea that I had. So I have the one, I have it here as well. It's an idea I had when I was little, and it's the story I took with me to the summer school course that I did because we needed to bring a story with us. So we did a full like mock-up in that week. You sort of leave that course with a little handmade book.
You achieved so much in that week. My mock-up looked
my god, like it was nights. It was nights. Like I was like in the library. I was also very pregnant, like 7 or 8 months or so, and everyone was just referring to me like that's the pregnant lady, and I was like sweating. It was a long week, but very, very cool. And I was like, this time I think I can do better, right? Like I know how to prepare my files. I know how to set this up. I know what to do to make this into a book. So yeah, that's when I did send it around to a bunch of publishers. I'd always heard, like, especially in that course, it's very much about how do you approach publishers? How do you pitch your book? Like, how do you create that pitch? So I'd done that, sent it to a few publishers that I thought it would be a good fit for, but it wasn't a good fit for them at the time. Like, it took a while to get responses. No one was interested. And I was like, well, I've done this before, so I'm doing it again. Like, I can just, now all it needs an InDesign file. I can do that. So did that, and then was like, okay, who's going to pay for it? So that was the next question. I feel like I've sort of learned as I went along without being very scared of like all of the steps that was needed. And I think that was very good because I think if I had known beforehand with, for example, the first book, but also with this one, of all of the things that needed to happen before it was out in the world, I'm not sure I would have done it. But because I took it sort of one step at a time, it was like fine.
How did you finance it? Did you invest your own money or do a Kickstarter? Or
I did a Kickstarter, which scared
something else to learn.
Yes, and that was like the most scary part because then you're actually asking people for money, right? And I was trying to think of how can I do it this the most cheap way. I also didn't want to publish this and then have it sort of disappear. I was like, I want the story to be out there, right? I felt very proud of it, and I felt like people would like it. So I tried to say, okay, I want to sell 100. That seems like a reasonable thing to do. I like self-published some little things before that I felt like I could sell 100 of. Looked into pricing, looked into what it would cost, and then basically added some hours on top of it and tried to set it up. And then you're just begging everyone for money. Like, that's how it feels. For a couple months, I was just begging everyone for money and being like, donate. But to be honest, as soon as it opened, so I started before, as soon as it opened, I think I hit my goal within like the first 48 hours. It was very
Wow.
impressive, like to me, that people would just pony up this money, and they would all buy a book, right? So it wasn't like, oh, just donate to me and I will then sell them. You're just buying a book off of me, and then by the time I'd sold 100, yeah, I was good, and I ordered them and I sent them out. The shipping was the most difficult part, I would say, but yeah.
But you pulled it off.
Yes, we did it. Yeah. My husband was like in his little village post office where his parents live, and I sort of asked him if he could take care of the shipping. He was like, "Yeah, sure." And this post office guy was like, "What?" I think they maybe get like 5 things to mail out in a day, and this is like 100 international books, like tracked shipping. The man was like, "What are you doing?"
Oh, that's funny. He hadn't bought into the Kickstarter, then I take it.
I don't think no, but the whole village knew about it afterwards, right? Like his parents were like, "Yeah, everyone's asking us questions, like why were you sending out all these books?"
I love it. I have one question for you that I didn't prepare you for, so you can just say if you can't come up with anything right now. But if anyone is looking, like maybe they have the same thing, maybe they've prepared it and they're not able to get this into publishers, they're not getting the responses they hoped for. What is the biggest tip you have for someone who wants to self-publish their own book?
Don't be scared. No, it's honestly, I've really grown to love self-publishing because I think it brings sort of, it can sometimes feel it. It feels to me, we talked a little bit about this beforehand, where it feels like sometimes it feels like the publishers are kind of gatekeeping, like being being an author, right? Or being an illustrator, like it's being held from you. And I was like, I just want this. This needs to be out there. And I feel very strongly about it. And the amount of feedback I've gotten from the people who have bought a book, who are still reading it, like it has a beautiful impact on those around me. Like there's 100 people who have my book. Some of them are still reading it. I know also one ended up at Goodwill for sure. But like a lot of people enjoyed it, and that's also very valuable, right? So I think you can learn all the skills, right? There's YouTube, there's people who know things. Ask your friends for help, ask everyone for help. You can do it. You can learn anything. It's not rocket science. It honestly isn't. The illustrating and the story part is the most difficult part of all of this.
That's when you've made it as an author illustrator, when your book makes it to Goodwill and it just goes out into the world and you can't track it anymore.
It was really funny because it was actually bought by my son's teacher. So my son is now he's 5. And she was reading it to the class, and my son was like, "Oh, my mom made that." And she's like, "No way." And then he's like, "Oh, wait, like, actually, that is your last name on the cover." So like for some reason, and she was like, "Who donated it?" And I was like, "Oh," because I do know most of the 100 people who bought it. So.
But that's great. She bought it not knowing it was you. So it wasn't like
exactly. And it's in the school library. It will be there for a long time.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. I think that's really inspiring, just because I think I think, yes, gatekeeping, but also I think it can kind of take a crack at your ego. Like if you're really trying to create something and try to build a career, or like you're sending out your portfolio. And of course it is a business on the other end. So they have every right to think about their ideal customer, their lines, like what is the art that fits and everything. But it still kind of hurts because your art can be so personal. It can be such a big dream, right? I remember I was excited when I moved on from like, I'm getting 0 response to get like, I'm getting no's, like someone's taking the 5 seconds out of their day. It's like, oh, it's not a good fit. Like, it's getting better. But so I can understand, that can be kind of painful. So I think this is a really beautiful alternative as well. If that's not working and you think you have something you want to share with the world, you've pulled it off, getting it out there. So I think that's a cool solution too.
There's also, I felt like I could like mentally and emotionally move on. Like there was this book that I had in me that was now out there, and I'm like, done. Now I can close it, and yeah, on to the next thing.
I love it. Thank you so, so much for sharing. We are going to move on to Ariel now. And let me grab a question here for you. 1 second. Okay. So I would like to know, when did you know you were ready to illustrate a book?
Wow. When did I know? Did I know? That's more of the question. Do I still know? Am I doing it? So I guess I would say there wasn't really one moment, but my confidence built steadily as I was getting positive feedback from others. So before I was an illustrator and I was sort of in between, I had just finished working as a high school teacher and I was tutoring and I was just drawing all the time because that's what I felt like doing. Instagram also just sort of came into my life. It wasn't as popular as it is now, but I was starting to just post things on Instagram and I was getting lovely feedback. And even though the feedback from Instagram, it's not always real, the number of likes doesn't equate to how good your illustration is. But it was more the fact that I felt like I could post something, I could finish something, I could put it out into the world and other people would see it. That felt real. Rather than just scribbling in a sketchbook at home that no one would ever see. It felt like a step towards the job that I realized I wanted. So once I did that and I got more followers and I got people asking me for commissions, my confidence grew and I created a portfolio, which I then brought to an agency critique in New York. And it was the Bright Agency, which is a big agency. And they're currently who represent me right now. Wonderful. I've had wonderful experience with them. But at the time, I was not represented by them. And I brought what I thought were wonderful, my favorite illustrations that I had done. There was some Alice in Wonderland art. There were just random. There was portraits of celebrities that I admired. Everything. And I was so proud. And I went to this critique and there was the owner and CEO of Bright Agency. And she sat down with me and she just destroyed my portfolio. I think she said it was chaotic. But what she did do was actually extremely helpful because it didn't destroy, she wasn't as harsh as I made it sound, but she didn't destroy my entire hope. What she did was she chose a few pieces and said, this is the direction that you should go and work on these, because she was absolutely right. They were chaotic and I hadn't done enough research to know what should be in a portfolio. So a lot of people, when they're starting out and they want to do children's illustration, for some reason it doesn't click that you need to have a lot of children. You don't necessarily need adults or teenagers or dark themes. You want, cute things, and you need narratives. You need to show storytelling. You don't just want one kid sitting there reading a book, because that doesn't tell us a lot about who that kid is or what the story is around that kid. And that's what publishers want to see. So I learned so much from being destroyed in that critique. Thank you. And eventually did rework my entire portfolio, submitted it to the Bright Agency, and found my agent there, which was fantastic.
Nice.
So I guess having an agent made it feel real, because then you knew that there was someone in the industry who had confidence in you, who wanted to spend time promoting your work, because it's a lot of work for them and they only get paid when you get paid. So I was just really, really happy that someone felt like that they had trust in me to create art for them and to create a book.
That is so beautiful. And I had a similar experience with the critique, and it was also for picture books, which again, that's not where I'm going. But I remember I got this looks like a fruit salad comment, because I was so bad with my colors and like no focal points,
It wasn't a fruit salad? What was it actually?
No, it wasn't a fruit salad. It was like a scene with like a lake in the front and mountains in the back, but I didn't know, like to have things in the background, maybe not as intensely colored, and it was like, it was crushing. Yeah. And she basically said like, oh yeah, dog looks like a rabbit. And like, it was just, but you know what? She was right. Like, again, I learned so
They're
much.
experts.
And it's like, it's kind of hard to hear, but wouldn't you rather hear the feedback so you can work on it versus just always getting declined or not hearing back? So I think reviews are great. Like, I did mine at the, I don't know if you say it differently or spell it out, but like the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. And like, I did them there, and it was really great feedback. And I had another review, and it was a lot more friendly, even though it still had some good pointers. But I think that's such a great idea. Like, even if you have community, there's other picture book illustrators, like get some feedback if you're going in the right direction. I think it's so
feedback from experts too, because
yes,
people in your life will be very kind, and they will tell you that your artwork is beautiful, and in your parents or out of your family or your friends, and it's hard to trust them, even if they are. Thank you, Mom. Thank you, everyone who's always said that my artwork is beautiful. But once you hear it from someone in the industry, it makes a difference. And even if the feedback isn't positive, you have a direction in which to take it.
Yeah.
So I forgive her for calling one of my children's illustrations frightening. I think that I had drawn the eyes like really intense, like enormous eyes.
I've had a face like that.
Yeah.
Where you feel like you just need to, like,
Oh my
I
goodness,
once had an album cover, I think I sent in, and someone was like, the kids look like they're in some substance. And I was like, oh. And now looking back, I'm like, totally. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I can see that actually. But see,
Surprising how
better to
talented
scare the
eyes
art
are.
director than the little children, because that would be really bad reviews.
Yeah, like if you little children
Terrifying.
can be very creepy if you draw like a little bit off. Like
Yeah.
So easy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, Ariel, you already touched on it a little bit, but I will ask you as well. What things do you think are a must for a picture book illustration portfolio?
Absolutely. So I'll just quickly go over what I said before. Children are a must. It's nice to have a varied, varied skin tones, varied sizes, ages, ethnicities, all of that with children, from babies to I don't know what. And then also some animals and objects, if that's the direction you want to go in. I know that it's possible. Some artists are just all about children or just all about animals. If you can do both, and objects as well, if you can do all of that, that's nice to show. I love drawing animals probably more than I love drawing children. So my portfolio, when it first came out, was more directed towards that. And that helped me get my first job as well. You want to also, I think Niña mentioned poses. Can you show that you can make the same child in different angles, different poses? Because you will have to do the same child and not make it look like someone else just because she's wearing different clothes or pajamas on one scene, or her hair is down or her hair is up throughout the story. So that's it can be very challenging at first. And the only way to get better at it is to draw that character a million times. Oh, and hands, a million times hands. And if there's something that you're not very good at, just draw that until you can't stand it anymore. And that's what I do with bicycles and cars. My least favorite things to draw.
yes.
Also, if you're a big person like I am and you love to draw characters, make sure that you also have backgrounds and interiors and exteriors in your portfolio. Otherwise, it can look like you only want to draw characters, even if it's true. They want those publishers want to see that you can be more varied than that.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And again, like with my illustration style stuff, that's the feedback I got as well. It's like, okay, a child needs a context for this drawing. Like, you just have these two random figurines on the page. Like, what is going on here? But I think there's room for that art, for example, more in a greeting card space or something, right?
Yeah,
Then you don't need this whole storytelling narrative. You don't need these elaborate double page spreads. But for picture books, you do have to be able to tell that story that much more and give the viewer more. And I'm also always wondering, how do the three of you actually go about this in your portfolio? Do you show text already? And like, how do you come up with the text? Is it only the visuals that stand by themselves? Because I know like sometimes you can have maybe the text says one thing and the picture says something else, you know, so do you try to show off skills like that too? Or do you just do pure illustrations and never actually show text that would come with a picture book?
I've been advised to not show the text.
Okay.
So I don't have any text in mine unless it's a book cover. Then there's the text because it's important. But otherwise, your illustration shows, because the people who are looking at it are experts in their field, so they can know, they're looking for you as an illustrator, and they can know what you're able to do by looking at the work without the text. But it is true that the best illustrations take the text and run with it and create something secondary that's going on in the background or tell a secondary narrative. And when they tie together, or even when they oppose, it makes for beautiful picture books.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. That's good advice though. So probably don't try to get too fancy and just show off the pure illustration skills that you have. Very cool.
I think maybe unless you do hand lettering really well, right? If that's one of the skills that you want to show, I would include that, but I'm not great at that, so I leave it out.
That's good advice. Awesome. All righty. I'm going to just bring up this as well. I don't know if you want to just take a minute to say something to your series here.
For me to say something to my series? Hello. Yeah. I love doing this series. It's about a little dog, a rescue dog who works at a farm. He lives at the farm. He does work. He helps herd the sheep, and he gets into shenanigans and adventures. And it's a color cover, but black and white interiors, which is a nice change when you're used to doing picture books, and they can be very time consuming. And it takes maybe 4 to 6 months, 7 months sometimes of your life to work on this one project that's beautiful, but consuming. And so sometimes you just have these black and white interiors and what's wonderful about the Good Dog series as well is the idea is it's very sketchy looking. So I have a lot of fun inspired by my own dog and walks in nature and going to farms to get inspiration about these. But I absolutely love doing them. And they're really, really sweet stories. So much fun to read if you have a child who's just learning how to read. They're good to read too. And then, yes, if you have a child that's just learning how to read, they can read them themselves because they're very simple stories.
It's adorable. I'm a big dog fan, and just this image, it's just so full of emotion. It's adorable.
He's proud to do his job on the farm. No problem.
All righty. So we are going to go into a little round of like kind of advice questions. But while we do that, I want to ask the audience here. This is your chance to get in a question that one or all of the illustrators may be able to answer. So what burning questions do you have about picture book illustration? Let us know here in the chat. I know we have quite a few people watching, but it's a little quiet today in the chat. So please do ask. Don't be shy. We will bring up a few of the questions here onto the screen and give our best to give you an answer. So until we get some of those questions from the audience. Okay, this is a juicy one. So anyone can answer this, all of you or no one, as you wish. But I want to know, what has been your biggest learning in getting into picture book illustration?
Do you mean the biggest learning? Oh, and getting into it, not what we've learned since?
Yes. Well, either. Whatever comes to your mind is fine.
Well, I would say one of the most surprising things about working in picture book illustration is how little you actually coordinate with the author. Usually there's no contact whatsoever until afterwards. And also how much sometimes they depend on the publisher. I mean, it depends on you to do some of the marketing and the social media. I didn't realize that your job is essentially more than just being an illustrator, but you need to learn how to market yourself and get yourself out there.
Wow, I'm not focused on going into this direction, but that's still kind of a depressing answer because I feel like that's no matter what, as an artist, you always have to get good at marketing, and I'm so
I
bad at
know. I mean,
marketing
I say that
myself.
not being very good at it and knowing that that's something that I can do to improve, to make my career move forward.
That's so key, huh?
That is a bit depressing, isn't it?
Yeah, but I guess, we all know what the answer is. We just got to figure out how to actually make it happen. Any other thoughts on this question? Otherwise, I'll bring up a different one.
I learned that networking and having a close critique groups and keeping in touch with other illustrators is really necessary, because it's such an isolating career and you're often alone all the time. So it really helps that you do have a group of people who understand what you're going through and questions you may have that you don't want to ask, publishers or your agent, and they're in the same boat, and it really helps to have that community.
Yeah, which I think goes even doubly also if you want to self-publish. It's very helpful to have people help you critique your pages, like instead of an editor or like an art director. It's great to have friends who have taste and have a bit of knowledge about what goes into a children's book, or who know how to edit or copyright, stuff like that. It's very, very, very helpful.
That's awesome. I think it always comes back to community. It's so important in these kind of roles where, you're not going into an office every day. You don't have built-in coworkers or anything like that. So you kind of have to build your own support system and ways to learn. So I have one more question for you. And that is for artists interested in creating this income stream. Now, I mention it as an income stream because often in this kind of podcast, we have things where maybe, it's easy to over time build up 3-4 income streams. I'm not sure with picture book illustration. I feel like you have to be pretty focused to make this happen. But for those who do want to start a career in this field, what's the hardest thing and the best thing about building a career in picture book illustration?
I would say it's actually the hardest thing is also the best thing, and that's the flexibility that comes with this career. Because what's hard about that is you don't necessarily know. You have to be flexible about when your money is going to come in, when the next project's going to arrive, because you just don't know if your art style, it's what's happening right now, or the things that you have in your portfolio are what's trending in the publishing industry, or maybe you just need to improve your art skills. For whatever reason, you have to be flexible about that, which is very challenging, obviously. But then when it does happen, you can be flexible about how your day looks and what part of the day you feel the most creative, whether it's the evening or the morning, or you can be like me and just up and move to another country, live in France now. I used to live in the US, and I can obviously do my career anywhere. I do it from my home, and I absolutely love that. So you can make it your own and hope for the best.
Yeah, opportunity and challenge, right? All at the same time. Any other thoughts on this one?
I think for me, it's that blank canvas is always the hardest thing for me. The start to a new project is always overwhelming. It'll take me 2 weeks just to jump on a new canvas and just even have an idea. And also a hard thing is, how do I keep my style fresh? That's always, I struggle with that lately. But the best thing is the books you get when you get something in the mail. I love getting the finished product in the mail and just opening it up, and it's like Christmas.
Must be an incredible feeling, to see those months and months of work come together in this little piece in your hands. That's incredible. Yeah. Wow. All right, so I'm going to give the last call for the audience if there are any questions you have. Otherwise, we will do one final one here. Okay, and that is, are there any resources that have helped you learn about and improve your skills in picture book illustration, or anything that goes along with becoming a picture book illustrator or doing your self-published projects?
Yeah, for me, it was that summer school that I've also already mentioned a couple times, but also I did I believe it was a Domestica course on InDesign and how to like prepare your book, which is kind of crucial if you want to self-publish, is understand how that software works. It's not that difficult, but you just need to know it. It's just like InDesign or like a Illustrator or Photoshop. You just need to know how it works. And once you do, it's quite intuitive, but that opens it up completely, because then you can prepare everything for print.
And it's the Cambridge School of Art.
Yes, that's the summer school I did. Yeah,
and they also do have a master's in picture.
Oh, they do. Yes.
I always see like the graduates come out, and I mean, I actually went to like one of the shows, I think, and the World Illustration Awards.
Yeah,
the
I can only gush about that.
They seem to know what they're doing in that program.
Amazing tutors, amazing teachers. Every student that I've seen come from that school, it's just been so impressive. So, yeah.
Cool. Any other resources?
I mean, this seems like it should be obvious, but it helps me every single time, which is just looking at a bunch of picture books, other people's picture books. How are they designing the page? How are they composing? What colors? How did they transition the colors from the beginning to the end? Does it change? Does it fluctuate? How do they use that to tell their story? And sometimes I forget that I can just go and get a bunch of books from the library and have those in front of me. And honestly, it's such an inspiring thing to do. Free education.
I actually took, are we allowed to? I took a Leela Rogers Make Art That Sells class.
Yes, I love those.
Yeah. And it was the general one where you get to play with all types of fields. I think she is on every single one. It's not like focused. It was just in general. And I think that really helped me just incorporate little things from making a product and then trying to put it into my style. Like, how can I just did something really cool. How can I put that in my picture book art? And that really helped a lot.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, they have a picture book course as well. And it's absolutely incredible. I can totally recommend it. It is a pretty huge investment. So in comparison to, for example, SVS Learn that was mentioned before, like SVS Learn is much more affordable. I think it's also very, very good content. But I do love the Make Art That Sells courses. Leela Rogers is an agent herself and has so much experience. And if this is something that you're pretty serious about and you can afford the investment, I do recommend it. And something that was cheaper that I also did. So you can tell I think this is something I wanted to do a few years ago. I also did, there's like a time online course. It's University of California, San Diego, had a picture book track. I only did one course, but it was very different than all the other courses. It was much more step back. Let's look at the full process of things. So like you were saying, analyzing picture books and the page turns and like not getting fancy with illustration at all. It was not a focus on the art. It was a focus on, hey, this is how many pages are usually in a picture book. This is, how are you going to do the page turns, analyze the different layouts. And like, it was much more technical in that sense, but really making you think about things that maybe you never think about when you're just admiring a picture book. So that was
so important to know.
Cheaper, and kind of, less art focused. Like I remember doing sketches and I would get these bad reviews from the teacher because she's like, these are way too detailed. Like you are missing the course. So I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. Like I thought this was an art course. Like I'm trying to make it pretty. And she's like, no.
I got that feedback too. Like you're trying to make it too pretty.
Exactly. Like
more sketching, more practicing.
Like fail.
Sorry.
But I still recommend that as well. That's very helpful. All right. So, this is an interesting question. So we're going to end with this one audience question that we have from Andrea Albrecht. Let me ask you, in what ways can you get feedback from actual children who read your books?
Wow. That is a tough one because
I have two.
I've gotten
Oh,
letters. I mean, I get letters from schools sometimes,
oh,
or a teacher would email me, find my email on my website, and just send me messages through that. And then kids at my daughter's school.
I was lucky enough to do a read aloud story time in a bookstore in my city, and that was amazing. It was so much fun because up until then, I had never witnessed a child actually experiencing my books. My first book came out during COVID, so there was that whole thing. And then I moved countries, and my books weren't available in France, and they're now available in one bookstore in my city. But they're all in the US. So even seeing them in a bookstore, didn't happen for a couple of years. But seeing them experience the book, I think I read Gideon Kvetch, which is my most recent book that came out, and laughing at the right times and asking questions. And it was really, really, really special. So, and then of course, kids are very honest. So they will tell you if they don't know what the bird is. There was a lot of debate over what kind of bird it was. And in the end, of course, it's just a made up bird. I didn't have a particular kind of bird. I guess that was the way that I had feedback from children.
That's very
in the
cool.
best way
Must be such a magical moment.
Yeah.
It is. That makes it real, I think, more than anything else, because your target audience is children. It's not parents who are buying the books. So seeing them experience it was honestly the highlight of my month.
Oh.
That's incredible. All righty. So let me hide this. And I think we'll end here. I just want to thank you, though, for joining. It was so beautiful to hear your stories. And I think there's going to be quite a few artists in the audience that are going to feel inspired to maybe keep going if this is a goal of theirs. There's a few resources that were mentioned, but also just hearing your personal stories that, you can actually achieve this. There's different routes to go, and just keep going, get some feedback on your portfolio, build a community, right? Get some input. And then maybe if this is your big dream, you can make that come true. So final call for the artists. Is there anything I haven't asked you that you really, really wanted to share about the picture book industry?
I think we covered a lot. I think that this is, I'm going to have to watch it again.
Awesome. Well, I won't keep you any longer than it's been a long chat, but thank you so much. And I really appreciate all your time. For those of you who are watching and are maybe not quite sure yet if this is the right career for you or exactly how you're going to build different income streams from your art, where you want to go, please also join us again live in 2 weeks, always on a Saturday. The next one is going to be about art licensing, which, the art usually is quite different than in the picture book illustration space. But you have options, and you're going to find a way to make the art that's in your heart, bring a little more of you in it, like Niña was saying, and then hopefully you'll find a right path. And I hope these conversations help you. All right. See you at the next one. Thank you so much. And here comes the outro. Make sure, I didn't mention this before, so I'm going to add this really quickly. I have the links to all the artists who were so gracious with their time today in the description of the video below. So make sure you visit them on Instagram, check out their website, and go say hello and thank you if there's anything that you got out of this conversation.